Good morning. Oh, good. I'm glad it's going well. Good morning, Daniel. How are you? Good morning, Michael. Good morning. Good morning. Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. It's Wednesday. We're getting there, halfway through the week. As you can see on the slide, please make sure that you're getting Canvas open. We are going to be starting our civil liberties lesson today. And the last 20 minutes of class or so, we're going to work on the course arc and notebook, getting that set up, doing the essential question, doing the vocab. And then tomorrow we'll work more in the course arc notebook, helping you get that done. And talking more specifically, about civil liberties. So I'll give it a few minutes. Hope everybody's having a good morning. Again, getting Canvas open, please. And that will help save us time in the middle of class. Good morning. If you're just joining, please make sure you're getting Canvas open. We're going to be working on civil liberties today. We're going to be in the PowerPoint for about half the period, and then we'll work in the course arc like the last 20 minutes. We'll get the course arc and the notebook started. So if you could have Canvas already open, that'll save us some time when we get to that. Great. I'll give it about one more minute. Wait and see if anybody else joins us. Again, hope you're having a wonderful day. Happy Wednesday. And please do as it says there on the slide. Go ahead and get Canvas open. We're going to be working in Module 7, Lesson 2, the course arc and notebook, the second half of the period. So it'd be nice if you already have Canvas open. That'll save some time. Halfway through the week. Good news, it's sunny today, right? That rain yesterday, I mean, we needed it, but it is nice to have the sun back. I don't know about you, I get used to the sun. So I think tomorrow it's supposed to get cloudy again, but at least today it's going to be sunny. The rain California's having, holy moly, they're getting hit really hard right now. Good news though, the mountains are getting a lot of snow. This is good. This will help with the spring thaw and help replenish rivers and things like that. So a lot of snowfall does actually help with some of the drought issues, not all of them obviously, but it does help with some drought issues because all that melts in the spring and then goes into lakes and rivers and stuff. So it is helpful when you have a lot of snowfall. All right, we're going to get started. All right, hope everybody's having a great day. Welcome to government. We're going to be talking about civil liberties today. So kind of continuing that conversation that we started last week and on Monday of civil rights. Kind of see it as yin yang, civil liberties, civil rights. So they're kind of, I like to say it's like a coin and there's two sides to a coin. So civil rights are things that the government does to protect us. So see it as like a friend having your back kind of thing. And then civil liberties are protections against the government overreach. So maybe someone that's trying to beat you up and you have a shield or something like that, you know? So see it as like the same coin, but the heads and tails of it. So one is the government backing you up, which is civil rights. And then civil liberties are protections in laws and amendments in the Constitution that protect us from government overreach. So we're going to be focusing more on what protections do we have against government overreach so that we have freedom, so that the government doesn't just say hop and we say how high. You know, so that is really important that we have protections from the government, because the very thing sometimes that can protect us can be too controlling. Have any of you ever felt like your parents were a little too controlling? Maybe they wouldn't let you go out late. Maybe they were controlling what you were doing. Parents, that's actually a great analogy for that. You know, parents protect you from society, right? They're there to protect you. But also maybe sometimes we feel like our parents go too far. They don't give us enough freedoms, you know? So think of it as civil rights and civil liberty a little bit. Government backing us up and protecting us, but then civil liberties protecting us from that government overreach in some ways. God, not a single response in the chat. So all your parents are perfect. Nobody ever. Good morning, Miss Carter. How are you? So nobody ever has a parent that's a little too protective, maybe. You're like, I deserve more rights. Sort of dream. You guys are in this weird transition state, right? Where it's like you're still technically youth, you know what I mean? Like you're in high school and things like that, but then you're almost adulthood, right? You're in this weird, you're in the gray zone right now. So I'm sure that there's some conversations sometimes where you're like, I'm going to be an adult. You can't tell me what to do anymore a little bit. That's awesome. If your parents don't overreach at all, that's great. I definitely had the opposite problem. My parents did not want to let go. And I was like, okay, I'm 18. Like we got some freedoms here. You can't, I know you don't want me to do this, but you can't stop me from doing this. So that's how mine are. I mean, come on, you know, especially if you're going to be leaving the house or something like that. Maybe sometimes, you know, the parents can latch on a little bit, or, you know, you can't go out anymore. You're like, I'm 18. I'm going to be 18. Like you can't set a 9 o'clock curfew anymore. Like we got to, you know, have some balance here. But if you got all the freedoms, good for you. All right. And stuff. Or maybe sometimes parents give too much freedoms. You know, like I had a friend in high school. She could do anything she wanted. I was like, what the heck? Like her parents had no limitations. And sometimes that is important. Maybe you need to have some, you know what I mean? Like it was ridiculous. She could do anything she wanted and she got in a lot of trouble as a result of it. So it could go the other way too. Not all freedom is good. So, all right, let's get going. So mine were strict. Oh, mine were definitely strict too. Like mine were super. I wasn't allowed to date till I was 18. I wasn't allowed. My driver's license, I got it when I was 16, but I had to have like all A's. Like my parents were super strict. I wasn't allowed to go to school dances. Like my parents were super, super strict. I was that person. Oh, that's right. Your parents don't let you do stuff. Hey, I would have taken that. I would have taken that. I know, but even that seems extreme, right? Especially nowadays. It seems like it's younger and younger. All right. So what standards are we going to cover? You had to have your brother go with you? That sounds pretty bad. Maybe I would have dated.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. You want to go to a party? Sure, but you got to bring one of your brothers with you.
I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty bad unless it's one of his friends or something.
They had no good friends. I had all the good friends.
Oh, that's funny. Lucy. Oh, okay. Isn't that weird? Sometimes like they're super chill on certain things and other things you're like, what the heck? Like you're cool with this, but not with this. That is funny sometimes. So, I mean, the good thing is they have good intentions. They want to protect you, but I agree. Sometimes, yeah, it's like, what the heck? Okay. So, it's tough. All right. So what standards are we going over? Again, this balance between state and federal law and state and federal power. Okay. What does the federal government have power for? What does the state have power for? And the limitations on that. So we'll be focusing more on the limitations when we look at the Bill of Rights. And then maybe looking at some instances in history, court cases in history, or movements in history that have been essential to this. Something that I think maybe I ran out a little bit of time on Monday that I want to emphasize is that civil rights, a lot of times people only think of the civil rights movement, right? You know, they think of 1950s, 1960s, which was definitely such a crucial time in the push for civil rights. But I want you to also broaden your mind a little bit that civil rights are bigger than that. They apply to everyone, not just a certain minority group. They apply to every group that is striving for equality. So we've seen gender movements, we've seen, the women's movement, the feminist movement, we've seen social group movements, we've seen, pushes for LGBTQ rights, so different ethnic groups, pushing for acknowledgement and equal rights. So while we have some very key movements that I think have had to push for greater equality, the reality is civil rights goes all the way back to the founding of this country, and they're currently happening now. You know what I mean? So it's an ongoing thing that any subgroup, any group that is pushing for and striving for fairness and equality, religious groups, again, social justice, ethnic groups, their gender groups, there's so many different examples of civil rights movements as far as like groups that are pushing for those equal rights. Of course, we have the civil rights movements in 1950s, 60s, African Americans, pushing, and that was so essential to a lot of ethnic groups pushing through, right, to get, to get more equality and more justice, for and stuff. So it goes into many subgroups of society. Okay. So civil liberties are what things are we allowed and not allowed to do? What are the limitations of that? Okay. For our bell ringer, today is International Thank You Day. I don't know about you. Every day is technically actually some special day. I've had people go, oh, did you know today is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I had no idea. All right. But today is International Thank You Day. So I thought that this would be a cool idea. Go ahead and I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Okay. And I want you to grab your phone. Some of you are probably already on your phone, all right, and not listening to me. So, Katya, some of you are like, what? What? Does she have eyes in the back of her head? Of course I do. So grab your phone and send a text to that person in your life that is really special to you. Maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a guardian, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a significant other, someone in your life that is really there for you that you're super thankful for. Don't make it too serious. I had a few people in first hour say that the people were like, are you okay? Because they were being nice. But send them a thank you text real quick. So just grab them, send a quick text. All right. So I sent my husband a text first period, and I said, I really appreciate you and all the hard work you do for our family. And he messaged back, what do you want? So that's probably a clue that I need to express more often.
Probably more like, how much money do you need, dear?
Right? I know. The fact I already texted my friend. The fact that I'm already texting my best friend right now while I'm in class. Well, make it a thinking of you text. Yes. Yeah. I just wanted you to know that I appreciate you and that you're important to me. Or if you want to say something else, you're welcome to do that. All right. Once you've done that, then go ahead and put thank you in the chat. All right. That we are thankful today. It's good to show appreciation. It's good to be thankful, even if you're having a hard day. Certainly we can find something for. So once you've sent that text, go ahead and write thank you in the chat for me. Let me know that you've sent that text. Okay. Or you could send an email if you want, but probably a text is a little bit faster. Try to make it, so they're not suspicious of what's going on or something. You know what I mean? Like I said, my husband's like, what do you want? It's like, what? Can't I just appreciate you? So a couple people in first period, one of them messaged their mom and said, thank you. And she was like, what'd you do? It's like, no, I didn't do anything. So we don't want to create a problem where there isn't a problem. But it's good to show expressions and say, I love you. I'm thankful for you. I appreciate you. You could make their day, make their day. All right. So I'll give you about 30 more seconds. Just send that quick text. Doesn't have to be much. Sometimes short and sweet is best. And then write thank you in the chat to let me know when you've done that. So send a message real quick to that person in your life that's important to you. Again, it could be your significant other. It could be a friend. It could be a parent, a guardian, just someone in your life that is just you're appreciative of, We all need that support system. All right. So I'll give about 30 seconds and then we'll keep moving. Okay, I've heard from 4 of you. Where are the rest of you? We've got like 25 people in this meet. So let's hear a few more thank yous that you sent your message. You're ready to go. been like 3 minutes. So, and I know it doesn't take that long to send a text. All right. Awesome. Let's hear from a few more people. Let me know that you sent that text. You're ready to move on. Okay. Awesome. All right. And if you haven't done it, I encourage you to do that. All right. And stuff. Everybody likes to feel appreciated, and it costs us nothing, right? Other than a text. And I even gave you class time. All right. I even gave you class time to do that. All right. So today we're going to be focusing on again, civil liberties. So I thought it'd be good to just review really quick. What is the difference between civil rights and civil liberties? So does anybody remember? Can we unmute or put it in the chat? What is the difference between civil rights, civil liberties? So I touched on this really quick at the beginning of class. Anybody want to unmute or put it in the chat? What is the difference between civil rights and civil liberties? I'll give you a hint. Both have to do with the government. It's just the government's role in our life. So think of it opposites, like opposites attract, like yin yang, kind of. Civil rights. Can anybody tell me what civil rights are? Good, JD. Yes, civil rights stands for our rights. Good. So that's where the government backs us up and stuff. Okay. Civil rights deals with legal. Okay. Civil rights is what gives civil liberties, protects us from government. Very good. Thanks. Awesome. Good job, you guys. Great. Okay. Yes. So it's kind of the opposites, right? So civil rights is protections or things that back up our rights, so the government, when they back us up. So for example, Brown versus Board of Education forcing a lot of states had desegregated, but a lot of southern states hadn't. So forcing those states to desegregate. So protecting people's rights to have fair and equal access. That separate was not equal, right? So it would be an example of that. Civil liberties is the opposite of that, when government's trying to overreach and protects us from that government overreach. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So kind of think of it as opposites, yin and yang. So both dealing with the government and rights, but one is protecting us against government. Okay, that's civil liberties, so protecting us against the government, so making sure they can't come too far into our space. Now, this does not mean that we can just do whatever we want, all right? A lot of people like to misquote that. They're like, that's my freedom of speech, that's my whatever, and they jabber something off. And the reality is that I want to go over these rights, but I also want us to understand that there are limitations on those rights, okay? We can't just do anything. So, for example, freedom of speech. I can say that I don't agree with you. I can even say I don't like you. You know what I mean? But that doesn't give me free pass, let's say, to use a derogatory term, maybe a racial slur, to persecute you, to threaten you. So there are limitations on rights. So for example, like freedom of speech, I have the right to disagree with someone. I have the right even to say that I don't like maybe what that person stands for, what they represent, or what they're into, or I don't agree with them. But that doesn't give me the right to bring harm to them or to slander them, right? So there are fine lines of freedom. Freedom doesn't just mean anything goes. And a lot of times people like to kind of misquote that, all right? We're gonna watch a really quick video that does actually a really good job of giving you some examples of that, especially for your age group, being younger, being in school or maybe going into the workplace, or if you choose to go on to college or something like that. That you have rights, but there are actually limitations on that right, especially when you go into certain institutions, when you're in public education, when you're in college, when you're in the workplace. It isn't just anything goes. And you actually have less rights when you're within those institutions. So let's watch that really quick. Okay.
What are you talking about? I've never infringed on your basic rights. Your freedom of speech? Well, yeah, I guess I cut you off sometimes, but that's only because you ask me for money and sick jazz bots on me. But if you feel oppressed, by all means, go ahead and speak your mind. Oh, hey, sorry to interrupt, but we've got to answer a letter. Dear Tim and Moby, we've been studying the Bill of Rights in class, and it seems like my school is restricting some of my rights. Are they allowed to do this? Sincerely, Phoebe. That's an interesting question, Phoebe. Although students do have rights, the Supreme Court has ruled that public schools can forbid certain activities and behaviors. The main restrictions involve two amendments in the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. The First Amendment states that the government can't prevent you from expressing yourself through speech or writing. It also prohibits the government from promoting any particular religion. The Fourth Amendment says that you can't be searched or have your property taken away without good reason. But students aren't fully covered by these rights because most are under 18 years of age, and schools act in loco parentis. That's a Latin phrase meaning in place of parents. Basically, it means that schools are responsible for kids' well-being in the same way parents are. Your parents can set rules for you that you have to follow, and schools can too. Since private schools aren't funded or run by the state, they can set more restrictive rules than public schools. For example, in almost every state, private school teachers can discipline students with corporal punishment or physical force, while fewer than half the states allow it in public schools. But parents and students may disagree with school policy and can sue if they feel their rights have been violated. In rare instances, when the law isn't settled or clear, the case will go all the way up to the Supreme Court. Like back in the 60s, when some students in Iowa wore black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. The school suspended them, and their parents sued. The case went to the Supreme Court, which ruled that political expression was protected by the First Amendment, even for students. As one of the justices said, students do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate. In a different case, the court ruled that public schools can't force you to say anything you don't want to, even the Pledge of Allegiance. They also can't force any religious beliefs on you, like making you pray or sing religious songs. They can't stop you from praying quietly to yourself, but if a public school encourages prayer, it might violate the First Amendment. Well, no, you can't do anything you want. If you disrupt class or use vulgar language, you can get punished. After all, other kids have a right to an education without a bunch of distractions. That's why many state courts have upheld cell phone bans in schools. Teachers can't teach if students are texting and taking calls. You can't necessarily wear anything you want either, since public schools are usually allowed to enforce dress codes. You can even get disciplined if you're away from school, like on a field trip or something. And if you work for the school newspaper or yearbook, you can't write whatever you want. Since these are official school publications, the school can edit their content. But there are limits. The school has to have a good reason for refusing to publish something. Right, the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment doesn't protect anyone, even adults, from all searches. In fact, police can search anyone, as long as they have probable cause to believe he's breaking the law. For instance, if an officer smells alcohol on a driver's breath, he can search the car. In a school environment, teachers and other officials operate on a similar principle. If they have good reason to believe you've cheated on a test, they can search your bag, your desk, and your pockets for a cheat sheet. Even if there isn't a cheat sheet, you can get punished if they find something else, like cigarettes. And if you're keeping something illegal in your locker, forget it. Lockers are school property, so schools have a lot of leeway to conduct searches. Since schools want to maintain drug-free environments, they can also give students drug tests if they sign up for any extracurricular activity. That includes everything from soccer to choir. You're right, that's not how the law is applied to adults. But the Supreme Court has ruled that since drugs are such a menace, public schools can take all sorts of measures to prevent students from getting involved with them. It's a small price to pay. As long as you don't use drugs, you really don't have anything to worry about. Well, think of it from the school's perspective. They have a really tricky job. They have to create a safe learning environment and, at the same time, protect everyone's constitutional rights. If you think that makes me the man, then so be it. I'm the man.
All right. I love Brain Pop. I know like a lot of this is more, a lot of their stuff is more geared toward middle school and things like that. But they do have a few videos that pertain to what we're talking about and stuff. So I think they do a really good job of simplifying it, right? And so you're saying the games are fun and stuff. Yeah, they are a great resource and program. What I like about this video is it helps to just kind of outline a little bit that there are limitations on our rights. So as we get into civil liberties and stuff like that, it is about our protections from the government, but that doesn't mean anything goes. You know, there are limitations, especially when you get into the legal system, especially when you get into things that are illegal or something like that. And everything. I love their conversation about corporal punishment. So I grew up in a private school, elementary and middle school, and the principal had they would spank. It had to be a really bad offense. So it had to be like if you did. I remember one girl got caught doing drugs when I was in 7th grade. She got spanked, like a fight. So it had to be like the higher end offenses, and they couldn't just like wail on you. I mean, you had to. I remember they had to call parents. You had to have 3 teachers in the room. Like it was very structured, you know. And stuff. But I remember that the principal had it on the wall, like it was like a display, and there was a hole in the end. It was like a long, almost like a cricket paddle, you know, so kind of long and skinny. And there was a hole in it so that when they would do the paddle, it'd go whoosh, you know, like there would be like a whoosh sound because of the hole and stuff like that. Of course, I never got paddled. I was just absolutely perfect in school. I never got in trouble. Well, maybe a little bit of trouble, but not paddle trouble, right? There were a lot of rules. There were a lot of rules. I will be honest, it wasn't scary as long as you didn't do bad stuff. Like I said, as long as you didn't get in a fight, do drugs, like the really bad stuff, like you didn't get spanked. It was for like the really bad. Yeah. So if you were doing that kind of stuff, then yeah, you could potentially get spanked, but it had to be like really bad offenses. They didn't just spank you for anything. You know what I mean? Oh, okay. So you went to a Catholic school, Miss Carter, and stuff. So they would do that. Yeah, if you maybe not your parents, and stuff like that. You know, and that is a dicey topic. It's a dicey topic. Some people, oh, Episcopalian. All right, you know, some people the debate of corporal punishment. You know, obviously in schools we've seen that pretty much removed. It doesn't really happen anymore. But corporal punishment is definitely a hot topic, especially when you get into parenting and things like that. You know, can you do it, and if so, to what extent? You know, and things like that. So the Bill of Rights is important because it outlines our civil liberties, you know, what they can and cannot do. And also sometimes within certain institution or certain circumstances, then what is allowed can change. All right. So we're going to spend just a few minutes going over these before we get into the course arc and stuff. All right. So the first 10 amendments to the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. And the whole goal for establishing these was when they established the Constitution, it was telling you basically outlining what the federal government could do. So the Bill of Rights amendments to the Constitution were put in to say, hey, we want to be really clear that our individual state rights are being protected. All right. So there are other things that define our civil liberties, but probably most importantly, it starts with the Bill of Rights. All right. So the First Amendment, a lot of people like to quote this. This is the most referenced or known: freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, and right to protest. All right. But there are limitations on those, right? So freedom of speech, that you know, I can say a lot of pretty much anything goes, except, right, I can't threaten other people. That doesn't mean it doesn't give me the right to use, you know, racial slang or things like that, or inappropriate terms that would be derogatory toward another group. So I can say I don't like this or I don't like that. And you might not agree with me. It might be wrong to say it, but I have the right to say it. There is a difference between how I feel about something and if I'm able to do something. You know what I mean? Just because someone's offended doesn't mean that they don't have the right to say it. But there are limits on that. You know what I mean? I can't threaten someone. I can't threaten to do harm. I can't slander someone or, again, be derogatory. So there's a fine line of that. Freedom of the press, same thing. That the press doesn't have to agree with the government. They can post things, but it has to be true. It has to be fair. It can't be slanderous. It can't be an outright lie. Freedom of religion. So I can't be forced to practice religion or to participate in a religion. So it's from religion and for religion that they have the right to assemble as long as they're not hurting others. Right to protest. But again, there are limits on this. It doesn't give you just a free pass. So you can't destruct property. You can't burn things. You know, there's limits on that. Also private property. So let's say there was a business that you were protesting. You don't have the right to go within that business and protest or disrupt their business. You have the right to protest outside the business. If it's like on a public sidewalk or something, you have the right to do that, but you can't go into that private business and do it. So there are limitations sometimes on protest. It has to be peaceful. You can chant, you can have signs, things like that. But when it comes to destruction, then we start crossing over into those freedoms end. Okay. Right to bear arms. So this was During the colonial era, the British were limiting the colonists' ability to have weapons or to have rifles to protect themselves. So this was written in saying that people have the right to bear arms. Now, again, there are limitations on this today, right? A lot of times you have to pass a background check. If you're a felon, you can't. And we hear the constant debate of whether or not we should put more limitations, on this. But still, at the end of the day, it does clearly state the right to bear some arms. The question then becomes what arms, how many, and in what capacity. Okay, so that becomes very debatable. Soldiers cannot be taken into homes without the owner's permission. So during this era, what was happening in the colonial era is that the British were forcing people to house soldiers and pay for it. So can you imagine if 4 or 5 soldiers showed up on your doorstep and said, all right, we're staying here for the next month and you got to feed me? It's like, what? So that protects us from that happening. Protects Americans from unreasonable and unlawful search and seizure of property, that there are limitations. So if I'm suspected of a crime or involved in something illegal, they can't just for no reason come into my home or search my property. So sometimes that means they have to have a search warrant, or depending on the circumstance, there has to be probable cause or reasonable suspicion. So let's watch a quick video on what that means or limitations of that.
In colonial America, under British law, government officials were allowed to search and seize property from people and their homes for no specific reason. This unfair practice was reversed by the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. The first 10 amendments of the Constitution are known as the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights spells out the fundamental liberties all Americans have. The Fourth Amendment begins with the assumption that citizens have the right to live free from unreasonable interference from the government. It states, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. The amendment provides parameters of how, when, and why law enforcement can conduct a search. It says the search and seizure must be reasonable and that there can be no action without probable cause. That means there must be enough hard evidence and information to support the opinion that a crime has been committed. Evidence that would lead a reasonable person to believe that the claim or charge of a crime is true. If these criteria are met, the police can go to a judge and ask for a search warrant. A valid search warrant is a piece of paper issued by the court authorizing a search of a home, car, or other property. The warrant has to be specific and define what police are looking for and where they expect to find it. For example, if the warrant specifically states police can search your garage for a stolen bicycle, they cannot search your bedroom or kitchen.
We begin today's show in Peru, where mass
So I think they do a good job of kind of giving you some examples of, you are protected from unreasonable search and seizure. So in some cases, a warrant is required. In other cases, you would only need probable cause. If it is a warrant that is searching a property or a residence or a vehicle or something like that, they are limited to the areas that are specified in the warrant. So again, I thought they did a good job giving the example. If it says the garage, then they can't go into the bedroom. They can't go into other parts of the house. They are limited to the area that they're specified and what they are looking for. And also that limits them on what they can take as well. Otherwise, they have to get a follow-up warrant or they have to modify that. Fifth Amendment allows everyone to due process, that you have the right to an attorney, you have the right to, being tried. You're innocent till proven guilty, okay? And you need to be made aware of those rights. They can't violate those rights if they are going to charge you with a crime. So let's watch a quick video on that.
All right, guys, if you've been injured in a car accident, you have to check this out. So I just got
Do you even know the Miranda rights?
You have the right to remain silent.
You have the right to remain silent.
You have the right to remain silent.
Walter White, you have the right to remain silent.
Most people know their Miranda rights from TV and movies. The right to remain silent, the right to your own attorney, and the right to a free attorney if you can't afford one. But why do people have these rights? And what could they mean for you if you're ever accused of a crime? Well, let's run through 3 big myths about Miranda rights. The first myth is that federal law requires people be read their rights. There actually is no law on this. Instead, Miranda rights are based on the Bill of Rights, which the founders wrote to protect a citizen from being forced to be a witness against himself. The goal was to prevent the government from using its power to to force Americans into confessions when their life was on the line. Now, when rich people were accused of crimes, they benefited from that rule. They'd just call their lawyer and avoid the police. But in 1966, the Supreme Court decided that rule should protect everyone. The court had just established a right to a lawyer for the poor, and in Miranda v. Arizona, the court ruled those rights don't mean much if people don't even know they have them. The court ruled that police could not use a confession they obtained from Ernesto Miranda because he wasn't advised of his rights. Police were then required to issue full warnings about suspects' constitutional rights, and those became known as Miranda rights. Another myth is that those rights must be read at the time of arrest. Actually, police only have to read Miranda rights before a suspect is interrogated in custody. So if you are ever arrested and make voluntary statements to police, even without a Miranda warning, that statement can be used against you in court. And then there's the biggest Miranda myth, that a failed Miranda warning is some kind of get-out-of-jail-free card. The Miranda rule doesn't dictate anything, though, about whether someone is guilty or innocent. For trials, Miranda is all about evidence. If police violate the requirement, they lose any evidence obtained through that violation, including confessions. But the same suspect can still be prosecuted with any other evidence. The rule is designed to discourage police from abusing Americans' rights, not to reward suspects in any other way. And that's what Ernesto Miranda learned. After the court overturned his conviction because of the use of the confession, he was retried without it, and a new Arizona jury still convicted him. He served about 5 years in prison before being released, and in 1976, 10 years after that case, Ernesto Miranda was killed in a bar fight. The suspect in his death was arrested and read his Miranda rights, so named after his victim.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe.
So you have the right to be notified of your rights. You have the right to not speak to law enforcement or be interrogated. You have the right to an attorney. If those rights are violated, and those rights only apply if you're being accused or prosecuted of a crime, right? So if they're just questioning you as an observer or something like that, you don't have to read your Miranda rights. But if you're suspected of the crime or they're interrogating you, then they have to notify you, especially if you're being arrested. And here's the thing to kind of note. That doesn't mean you get off the hook for the crime if they violate your rights. What that really means is if there's any violation of those rights, any evidence that was obtained during that time of violation, that is not admissible. Okay, that should have 2 S's. Sorry, I misspelled that. That is not admissible, but that doesn't mean that they can't still pursue the crime. That just would limit what evidence could be used against you. Okay. Sixth Amendment, the right to a speedy trial, a public trial of by jury. Okay. So it's not just, the same people who arrest you can't get up there and say you're guilty. That would be very biased. You know what I mean? You're allowed to have a jury trial. Seventh Amendment's kind of different. It's when it's a civil dispute, so maybe over money or property. It's in federal cases, anything over $20, you have the right to a jury trial. Eighth, protects you from, suffering cruel and unusual punishment. As they touched on in the video, they can't torture you while they're trying to get a confession from you. Ninth Amendment is, Ninth and 10th Amendment get a little bit more broad. So no one's constitutional rights can be infringed while pursuing someone else. So your rights, let's say you're accused of a crime, they can't violate your rights while trying to protect the victim's rights. Everyone's rights have to be protected in that process. Okay. And now that means sometimes that your rights might be limited if you are accused of a crime, but you still have rights that have to be upheld. Those can't be violated. And then 10th Amendment talks really about states' rights and what they're allowed to do. Okay. So what we're going to do is let's jump over into Canvas and we're going to get started in our notebook for the day, and then we'll pick up there tomorrow. So we're going to do the essential question and we want to do the key vocab. All right. So go ahead and go over into Canvas. And we're going to go to our period. So make sure you open up the shell. Okay. When you're on the home page, I just want a reminder, especially if you're new to class, make sure that you are going to the announcements every Tuesday, Friday. Okay. And when you click on that announcement, it's going to tell you exactly what you need to do on that small group day. So completing attendance, which honestly, I'm lucky if I get half of you to complete it. And honestly, that's not acceptable. You need to be completing attendance, right? It's easy to log in and get this done, and you need to do it for all your classes. Okay. So Tuesday, Friday, you got to get in there and complete attendance. All right. And then it tells you what's due that day. So module 7, lesson 1 was due, the course arc notebook and the quiz. And I attached that review sheet. And it also lets you know other things in the past that you should have had done. Okay, it tells you when small group is and the code to get into that group if you need. So on Friday, I'll do a similar announcement with all that information for Module 7, Lesson 2. If you go into the modules, we're going to be at Module 7, Lesson 2. So click on the Modules tab, and we're going to scroll down to Module 7. Okay, and we're going to be in the civil rights or civil liberties. Sorry, we did civil rights, and now we're going to do civil liberties. So you're going to click on the Notebook tab. All right, so before I do that really fast, just to remind you where the attendance is, that's going to be at the very bottom past the final exam tab, and you go into that specific day. Okay, so for example, yesterday was the 10th. This Friday will be Friday the 13th. Woo, Friday the 13th. Okay, hope nothing crazy happens. All right, so that's where you go to complete attendance. So we're going to go into the notebook, and once we're there, we're going to open the notebook. And once that is open, okay, there's 3 things that you need to do. You need to rename the notebook. So take that copy of and maybe put your last name or just the name of the notebook, okay? You need to save it onto your Google Drive. So again, remember, you're supposed to create a Google folder or a government folder and save it into the government folder. And you can add a new one right here by clicking new if you need to. And then you move it here, okay? And then you want to make it shareable. And you click down and you put anyone with the link. Okay, so you do anyone with the link. Okay, so those 3 things need to be done. So rename, save to the Google Drive, and make it shareable. So anyone with the link, make sure you click on that anyone with the link. So when you submit it, I can grade it. I can open it, okay? So you do those 3 things. Then we go back into Canvas. We're going to click next, and we're going to go to the course arc page. And we're going to click on that blue bucket button, and we're going to launch the course arc. Remember, we do the course arc and the notebook simultaneously. That's where you get a lot of your information for the notebook is from the course arc. All right. And once we open up the course arc, it's going to take us to this intro, this overview page. So course arc open, notebook open, ready to go. Those 2 things. Okay. Once you have both open, why don't you give me a ready in the chat to let me know that you have both open, you're ready to get started. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Dream. Thank you, JD. Thank you, Kevin. Give me a ready in the chat, please. Let me know that you have both open. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Faye. Thank you, Brendan, Michael, Josh, Lucy. Thank you. Kavi, thank you. Juan, thank you. Give me your ready. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so once we have both open, all right, let's get started. So we start in our course arc, gives us the overview of talking about civil liberties, so what we're protected from, what amendments, and analyzing the Constitution that sets out our basic rights and how we're protected from the federal government. Okay, so for example, like you can't be forced to stand for the pledge. You can't be penalized for that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can get up and you can disrupt the pledge, you know what I mean? But like kneeling or choosing not to stand in class or something like that, you are allowed that under the First Amendment, that peaceful protest, you know what I mean? That way of saying, I don't want to participate. You can't be forced to participate. Okay, would be one example of that. And we're going to look at examples, movements, court cases that question or help clarify, because sometimes you get into gray area, you know, kind of like, is this okay? Is this not? And under what circumstances? We see this a lot with like schooling. Okay, we're going to go to the introduction page. So we'll click here. There it gives us our Bill of Rights. All right. And here's our essential question. How are individual rights protected under the Bill of Rights? Okay, and we're going to put that. So copy and paste it, and we're going to put it into number 1 in our notebook. All right, and I'll put this in the chat for you. Okay, so go ahead and copy and paste it over and put it in number 1. And the reality is, again, there's a lot of rights that are protected, but there are limitations on all those rights. None of those are just anything goes. And oftentimes people, I love to hear people say, you know, I can do that. It's part of my freedom of speech or blah, blah, blah. And oftentimes they kind of think that's carte blanche, you know, anything goes, free pass. And the reality is there are limitations. Yes, but maybe that's okay, but this isn't okay, or it's okay up to this point. And it's good for us to remember, just because I'm offended doesn't mean it's not someone's right to offend me. There is a difference, though, between not agreeing with someone. Let's say that you don't like people with long hair. I'm like, that's not nice. Why are you attacking me with my long hair? But that is actually within your freedom of speech. Okay. Now, if you started threatening me saying I'm going to kill anyone that has long hair, that you are not allowed to say. You know what I mean? So there's limitations on those things. I can be offended and it's still within your rights. I don't know why you'd want to offend me because I'm awesome and amazing. No, I'm joking.
No, you are.
Thank you. You're so
You
sweet.
are.
Thank you.
Yes, I will champion you.
I appreciate it. Nobody said anything in the chat about long hair, so I was like, oh, come on now. We're all agreeing. You're like, that's right. You said it finally. All right. Are we good? Everybody's good? Let's move on to vocab. Okay. We're not going to watch the crash course. This is the one that we watched last week when we did civil rights, because it again kind of helps define the difference between the two. All right, let's get into key vocab then. Substantive due process, procedural due process. A lot of big words. Double jeopardy, indictment, and probable cause. Okay, so let's do the matching and then we'll fill out the, oh, sorry, I need to make sure I'm sharing this tab. Okay, so we're on this page right here, vocab. Okay, so the 5 keywords, sorry, I didn't have it on the right tab. So substantive due process, procedural due process, double jeopardy, indictment, and probable cause. So some big terms. So we're going to go down and do the matching, get started on our course arc, and then we'll put them into our chart on number 2 on our notebook. Okay, so the first one, the foundation of blank, is the idea that the government cannot infringe on a person's life, liberty, or property in a way that is arbitrary or fundamentally unfair. Okay, that is going to be substantive due process. Okay. The establishment of blank means that the government must follow specific procedures in order to deprive a person of their life, liberty, and property. So that's going to be procedural due process. So if I'm suspected of committing a crime, if the government, meaning like law enforcement usually is the government agency, right, that represents pursuing someone who's committed a crime or suspected of committing a crime, if they are going to infringe on my personal life, liberty, and property, there is a process with which to do it. All right. So example, like they have to have a search warrant. There has to be probable cause. It has to go through a grand jury. Like they can't just unannounced for any no given reason instead of just charge into my house, right? There has to be these things in place. So even when I'm suspected of a crime, yes, my rights might be limited, but they are still protected. Okay. So there are still process that has to be followed. Okay, so next one, according to blank, once a person has been tried for a crime, he or she cannot be tried for that crime again. That's double jeopardy. So if I'm found innocent of a crime, they can't try me again just because they find new evidence. All right, I'm sure they want to, and it would be really disheartening maybe if it was found that I was innocent of a robbery and then they found the weapon and they're like, your DNA's on it, you are guilty. I got off. All right. Or let's say I'm tried for a crime and I'm found guilty and they find more evidence of something and they want to stack more charges. They can't do that. All right. One and done, good or bad. The blank issued by a grand jury is a formal written procedure basically to say that I'm going to be tried for the crime, and that's indictment. So to indict me, they present evidence to a grand jury, and if they feel that there's enough evidence of probable cause, doesn't mean I'm guilty, but enough evidence to suspect me of the crime, then I can be charged with the crime. And then if a person shows probable cause, that's grounds maybe for a warrant or for a search or something like that. So for an example, when my husband pulls someone over, he's in law enforcement. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Do the best you can. All right. And you can always take snapshots or pictures so that you can go back and do it. All right. So sorry to hear that, Eve. So one example would be, and I'll start copying and pasting this over. When you pull somebody over and let's say that they reek of marijuana or they reek of alcohol or they're slurring their speech. So there's reason to believe that they're inhibited or that they're under the influence. They don't have to have a search warrant then to search the car for that paraphernalia, that alcohol or maybe marijuana, or to do a field sobriety test. All right. Probable cause sometimes is there's enough evidence to suspect that I am doing something wrong. You know what I mean? And that happens quite a bit in like a traffic stop or something like that. So you don't always have to have a search warrant. It depends on the circumstances. All right. So if we go over to our chart, okay, we copy and paste these key word and definitions into that. So you can take it from the chat and you can put it into your chart. And then you do definition in your own terms. So I'll help share that with you. Government must follow laws and not invade your rights or civil liberties in court proceedings. Okay, so they have to follow laws. They can't just do it because they want to, because they're mad at you, because they don't agree with you. There has to be a certain procedure. And those procedures must be followed when they are going to violate your civil rights, your civil liberties, and your property. So in our own words, there's a specific process the courts must go through in order to violate my rights. So I have rights up until a certain point, and if they're going to be violated, the courts must follow those. So like getting a search warrant, having probable cause, taking things to a grand jury. They can't just do it because they don't like me or they have a vendetta against me. Okay, double jeopardy. I can only be tried for a crime once, and that's whether or not I'm found guilty or innocent, even if they find new evidence. So once tried, one and done. And in most cases, this is a really good thing. Sometimes, though, if something new comes out, you're like, then the person got off, and it happens. But again, those protections are in place so that it can't be like a witch hunt, people just coming after you. Okay, so in order to indict someone, it has to go to a grand jury. There's a format before you're actually charged with the crime officially. And then you would enter a plea and then determine whether or not you're going to go to trial or not. And then probable cause is that a person has to show reasonable grounds for that warrant or for the action of law enforcement. So the example I gave you, maybe where you don't have to have a search warrant, would be if someone gets pulled over, roll down the window, and they reek of marijuana or they reek of alcohol. And it's like, that is probable cause and for law enforcement to do a field sobriety test, right? To see, are you under the influence, okay? And stuff which maybe you're not, but that gives them probable cause or maybe reason to believe that the circumstances would support. If this happened to my friend 2 years ago, or actually 3 years, it was right before the pandemic. A student told her that she thought another student in class had a weapon, had a knife in their backpack. And so she quickly reported it to admin. That student was pulled out of class with the backpack, and they searched the backpack and they found a knife in the backpack. So probable cause sometimes is just reasonable suspicion. I can't just search your backpack but if someone's telling me that there's a weapon in there for everyone's safety, right? That gives me grounds or admin grounds to do that. So sometimes your rights are limited. Okay. So once you have everything copied over, I'll give you another minute. Go ahead and put ready in the chat for me. Let me know that you got that done before we wrap up class today. And like I said, make sure that this is saved. Awesome. Make sure that this is saved on your Google Drive, because then tomorrow we're going to open this right back up. And tomorrow we're going to spend majority of our class in the Course Arc notebook. We're going to do 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to get a lot done tomorrow. So you don't have as much homework on Friday. You'll just have to do the Google tour, the journal question, the essential question, those free response, and then take the quiz. Okay. So we're going to do a lot of the notebook tomorrow in class. So definitely want to make sure you save this and that you're with me. Awesome. All right. So before I let you go, really quick, all right, we talked about civil liberties, what they are, examples of that. Most of our civil liberties are outlined in the Bill of Rights, and then helping to kind of define some of the limitations on that. This doesn't just mean free pass on everything. So what are the limitations? And sometimes those freedoms are limited even more, especially within the judicial system. You still have rights, but those rights are more limited. We worked on the Course Arc notebook. We got started on that. And then tomorrow we'll continue in the Course Arc notebook, and I'll give you the review sheet for your quiz. Okay. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you have any questions, stay behind. Otherwise, have a great Wednesday. I'll see you tomorrow. Make sure that you thank somebody in your life for helping you out, for being there for you, and stuff. And I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. If anyone has any questions, I can answer questions really quick. Bye, Miss Carter. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Anyone have any questions or anything really quick before I go? Everybody's doing good? Okay, I will see you tomorrow. Email me if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.